morning. This is a special edition of Inside Government with Cedric Peterson.
To our audience here at home and around the world, you are now Inside Government. With CARIFESTA 2025 just days away, St. Martin's delegation is preparing to share our culture and talent in Barbados from August 22nd to August 31st. This festival brings together artists from across the Caribbean in a powerful display of unity and creativity. Today we spotlight two talented filmmakers representing our island's cinematic voice. I'm joined by Mr. Jonathan Van Arneman and Mr. Peter Sagnia. Gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to have both of you inside government. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, going to jump right into it. This question is for both of you. What does CARIFESTA mean for St. Martin's film industry? Let's start with you, Jonathan.
Sure. So I think it's so incredibly important for us to be participating in CARIFESTA this year. You know, as we're having these ongoing conversations about the orange economy and how we can better represent our arts, not just in the form of entertainment, but also in the form of culture and in the form of a livelihood. I think platforms like CARIFESTA really provide an opportunity for people on the island, creators on the island, artists on the island to see venues where they can showcase their work. And so I'm really, really happy to be a part of this team. I think it's an amazing team. And I think that we have really powerful stories to tell. So I'm happy to see where it goes from here.
Excited for all of you guys. And I want to congratulate both of you on making it to this level. Peter, let me get your take on that same question.
No, just piggybacking off what Jonathan was saying, that I think it's a great thing. You know, I mean, I was not really familiar with CARIFESTA because kind of been in my own little world for several years. But just when somehow they reached out and we got connected outside of this group that was going, and they asked for one of our projects to be submitted, and we're excited about it. And then I was like, oh, this is what CARIFESTA is about. And I think it's fantastic, to be able to have a platform for Caribbean artists to gather together and, Jonathan says, showcase our work and share and grow and learn and, be inspired.
Jonathan, what stories are you presenting at CARIFESTA 2025?
Sure. So a mixture of stories, I would say. So it's one film. The film is called Atlantis Rebirth. We filmed in 2020. It came out in 2021. I was working with a local filmmaker, Maureen Kaye, who was the videographer for the film, partnered with the National Institute of Arts, and we put together a series of Caribbean stories, both real and imagined. And so we went through, the history of where have Caribbean people been, and if this is our history, if this is where we've been, then where would we like to go? And so it's both historic and imaginative in its form. And I mean, I look back at the film and I'm very proud of the work that we did. It was a very hard time. It was during COVID that we were filming this stuff. I was working with, at the time there were teens, and the maturity and the professionalism that they put forth in the work. And also the growth that we were able to have as a community, as an island, the stories that came out of that. It's really nice to see this then take on another life through CARIFESTA, and I'm curious to see what the feedback is going to be.
Same question for you, Peter. What would you be presenting at CARIFESTA 2025 this year?
So we'll be, we'll be presenting the 30-minute version of our feature film called The Wonderful Counselor, which is a film we released here earlier this year in St. Martin, which was well received. It's about a therapist who kind of deals with the community's mental health issues, but more from a spiritual Christian perspective. So he's very conservative in his values. And, so of course, sharing this with mental health has its sort of stigma, still, because we were able to communicate with the Mental Health Foundation here on the island. And, we wanted the project to sort of just be as real as possible without it being overly too dramatic. So there's some comedy in the film as well. But yeah, it's just addressing various clients that are dealing with mental issues or, stuff related to mental health issues in the community. So that's what we'll be showing.
All right, excellent. And we do have a trailer that we would now present to our audience. This is a look at the film that was produced by Peter Sagnia.
I am Dr. Michael Wonder.
Feel like I'm losing my mind, Doc. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm depressed.
Lead clinical psychologist at Wonder Counseling.
I'm highly disappointed in your services, Dr. Wanda.
Listen, we need to talk.
Get your life together, girl. Either go work on your marriage or ask for divorce.
Doc, why is there always some drama happening outside your office?
I told you to stay away from my daughter.
What? No, it's not what you think.
I will ruin you. Just watch.
Wow. You did not tell me your therapist was so cute. You'd be weird.
Hey!
You are so disrespectful.
Why don't you pray for me then? Lay hands. Cast out my demons.
That is a fantastic piece, Peter. Peter, what unique perspective do your films offer the Caribbean audience?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. What I found with this particular project is to cater to the audience. And what I mean by that is sometimes as artists, we look in our own lens and, you know, it's got to be done this way because this is my vision, this is my dream. But if it's not translating over to the audience, then you're kind of stuck. But with this project, and when we released it, the funny thing is I released it in the movie theater, but nobody saw the film. No, it wasn't screen tested. The actors didn't see it, so it was you don't really normally do that. You kind of like have to get it screen tested, people critique it. So that was just a crazy thing that I did. But the response each night from the audience translated. You could see it translated just by their response. And I was so relieved, number one, first, that happened, and excited about it, that our culture, man, we respond, every culture responds to things differently, music, whatever. And that's the great thing of how I believe God created everyone in our own unique way. And that's the same for us as Caribbean people, or, our Caribbean heritage, that we can be very emotional. We get attached to the characters. We talk back to the television. We talk back to the screens. And that's what, it was a joy kind of just sitting there in the theater every night, looking at the people respond and, talking to each other and talking back to the screen and don't do that. And I'm like, it's just a movie, guys. But seeing that reaction is always fun and a joy. Yeah,
absolutely. And that leads me into the next question for both of you: is how does Caribbean film differ from international cinema? Especially now, Peter, that your analysis with your experience, you're talking about how Caribbean people have been responding, and how different it is. But I want to get your take on that, starting with you, Jonathan.
Sure. I think that's a very, very important question. I think it brings up the topic of representation and how we can see ourselves. I think that, having the opportunity to see yourself on screen, on film, and being able to reflect in that way is really important. And unfortunately, it's not something that Caribbean people get often, especially St. Martin, And so having films, like Atlantis Rebirth, like The Wonderful Counselor, that allow people to see versions of themselves and their communities allows a certain type of introspection and reflection that I think is very needed. And it also brings so much pride. It's like you're proud of your culture. You're proud to see an accent. You're proud to see movement that you recognize. You're proud to be like, oh, I know where this was filmed. And I think that while other cultures, maybe have that more readily available because of, just the broadness of their film industry, I think now that the Caribbean is catching up to that, it's really encouraging.
Peter?
Yeah, that's I look at it like this, right? You've got film purists, somebody like the Spike Lees. I would call him the film purist, right? He's come from a film school, blah blah blah. He knows how to tell a story visually. And then you've got the sort of like the Tyler Perrys, right? Tyler Perry is coming from the stage, very expressive, whatever not. So the Tyler Perry approach, from what I've seen and what I've heard, because not everybody likes his work, and you can hear the critique online and blah blah blah, and they say his stories are, they're bamboozling, and but one thing I love about his response is he says, "I know my audience." and I know what my people want. So even though the film purists in Hollywood don't respect, say, so to speak, his work, he has an audience that he knows he's able to reach. And I think it's the same thing that applies to Caribbean cinema. I think there's some similarities again in how we respond to visuals, how we respond to music. We're very emotional people. We have, from the style of music that we listen to, we're into, whether it's, our soul music, our calypso music, whatever not. Just as a race as a whole, our people were very in touch with our soul and how we feel. And I think film plays a role in that also. And as I mentioned in the previous question, how we respond to the characters, and we want to see. This is the funny thing, and I used to be, and I'm just sharing my experience, where years ago I would always try to reach everybody. So I would say, okay, let me try to get some Caucasians in here. Let me try to appeal to that segment of the group. And yeah, that's fine. It has its place, from a marketing perspective. But at the end of the day, I think you just have to be true to what your vision is. Do you know what I mean? And respect the audience. No matter what, respect the don't think that they're not intelligent enough to understand your visual language. They actually are, so yeah.
Yeah, good take on that. The reference there to Spike Lee kind of probes right into my next question, because he's one through his film where he addresses issues of the culture, issues of the race. So my next question, how do your films address local issues or culture overall? Jonathan, let's get your take on that.
Yeah, so I think that's, right at the heart of Atlantis Rebirth. It is to address, I think one of the biggest issues that, St. Martin has is an identity crisis. Who are we as people? And how do we define what a St. Martiner is? The fact that that's still up for debate, I think says a lot about where we are as a society, because how can we move forward? How can we lay a foundation if we're still having questions about our heritage and who we are? And so, at the core of Atlantis Rebirth is this fundamental question: who are we as Caribbean people? Are we this? Are we that? Do we want to be this? Do we want to be that? And also, who gets to define that question? If we're not defining it, then someone is defining it for us. And so Atlantis Rebirth is a call to action. It is, this beckoning for us as St. Martin people, as Caribbean people, to understand the history of our bodies, the history of us as people, and then with that history, make informed decisions about how we want to move into the future. And so I think that definitely has implications for culture, for nation building, for all of that. And so and that relates back to the first question of representation. It's like having that represented in film now allows for a broader conversation, and it's not just a siloed topic. So yeah.
Peter, I'm going to get your take on this question, but it will be an opposite end of this short break that we're going to take. So stay with us. Stay tuned, everyone. Your Inside Government coming up. Jonathan and Peter will share with us the challenges and the rewards of filmmaking in the Caribbean and their hopes for inspiring future storytellers. Stay tuned. Your Inside Government.
The Ministry of Vromi, Department of Infrastructure Management, together with the Police Department, KPSM, is making changes to traffic on a section of Canagita Street and Manzanella Stake, Phillipsburg. The Canagita Street from the intersection with Percy LaBega Street to Manzanella Stake will now be a one-way street. Inbound traffic can enter Canagita Street from Percy LaBega Street and drive straight ahead or turn left into Manzanella Stake. Outbound traffic leaving town on Canagita Street must make a right turn onto Manzanella Stake. Entry further into the Canagita Street will no longer be permitted. Outbound traffic exiting Manzanella Stake onto Walter Nisbet Road can either make a right or left-hand turn. The Ministry of Vromi, Department of Infrastructure Management, and the Police Department would like to thank the public for their attention to this change. Please follow the new traffic rules and signage and drive safely.
In a country where music sweetens the ear and every brushstroke, every rhythm, every word tells a story, The region's premier arts festival comes alive in Barbados from August 22nd to August 31st. It's a celebration of us, or stories, or fire, or rhythm. A celebration of who we are through dance, theater, film, song, and soul. Come feel the heartbeat of a region right here in Barbados. CARIFESTA 15, Barbados, August 22nd to 31st. Caribbean Roots, Global Excellence.
Hi, everyone. If you're just tuned in, you're Inside Government. Thank you so much for joining us as we are covering the St. Martin delegation that will be traveling to CARIFESTA 2025. And in this edition, we are talking to our top filmmakers representing themselves in, of course, the country as well at CARIFESTA 2025. Peter, we left off in the first segment that question that I asked concerning how films, specifically your film, addresses local issues and culture. I want to get your take on that as well.
Okay, great question. Specifically with this film, as I mentioned before, it's centered around mental health, which is a stigma on the island, in most Caribbean islands, because we just, think that if you have to go see a therapist, there's a shame to that. So that sort of addresses that. But as a filmmaker, I like to sort of like be very subtle. In other words, I kind of play it safe. I'm not politically, I'm aware of politics and stuff like that, but I would not aggressively address a matter. I would subtly address it, right? So you'd put it in subtext and subplots and so forth, where you subconsciously think about it. Maybe not during the film, but maybe afterwards you'll go back, oh, that's what that meant. So I like to play it safe, how it affects, because stories are universal. That's how I look at things. A story is a story. And so no matter whether it's an African story or a Caribbean story or a European story, people are just interested in stories. That's why we watch documentaries or, now Netflix for shows, we just sit there for hours binge watching because, we just are always interested in the story, a beginning, middle, and an end. That's just how we've been created from way back when. But not to get off, I hope I'm not getting off your question, just how it affects our communities. As I mentioned, is just to be just subtle in my approach, whereas somebody like we mentioned with Spike Lee, he's very in your face kind of thing. I'm a big fan of Spike Lee's work and stuff, but I don't see myself as that type of filmmaker to hit the nail on the head and address the situation directly, because film, at the end of the day, from where I'm coming from, was always, for the 2 hours that you're in a theater, it was a means of escape. It was to escape from reality, escape from the world. So you can go and watch a movie, whether it's a comedy or a drama, to enjoy, to immerse yourself in a story. And sometimes that's all it is. It's not to be, political or, get your digs in on what you feel. It's now some artists, that's their thing, and I respect and appreciate the heck out of it. But for me, it's not that. It's listen, let people come in, watch a movie, and just enjoy those 2 hours or an hour and a half, whatever it is.
Thank you for your take on that, Peter. Our next question, and I want to get both of your takes on this. What hurdles would you say exist for Caribbean filmmakers, and how do events like CARIFESTA help? Jonathan.
Sure. So I think, part of the conversation that we've been having is just, having a platform to showcase your work. I think that one of the hurdles is just the lack of opportunities to showcase film, the lack of funding. It's like if folks on St. Martin know that every year there is this major festival where they're going to get so many viewers, so much exposure to different audiences, the impetus to create is so much higher. I think that people make rational decisions. I don't think people are stupid. And so people are going to align their creative choices. They're going to align their decisions with what makes sense for them. And so the more opportunities that we have for creators on the island to not only showcase their work, but also get paid for their work, also, create opportunities for livelihood, I think the more we're going to see this take off. And so I think at the basis of it, that's what it is.
Peter?
Same thing. It's just, I think obviously the biggest hurdle would be for most people finance. How do you get to finance your project and so forth? But the good thing is there are some things that have changed that I've seen over the years changed in terms of culture funds and stuff like that, that maybe as a filmmaker would have been hard to get access to, has now become a little bit, you can see some doors opening, you know, and support, of course, from, you know, the community is major. I think there's just a general thing that when you have homegrown talent, it's not as celebrated as much as overseas. That's not particular to St. Martin. That's everywhere, you know. So if you go to maybe even Barbados, there's you know, they may have local artists because they're not exposed like the Rihannas or whatever. Not they're not as celebrated, and I mean there's many reasons for that. But I think one of the biggest challenges is just actually the support that you know, we need from the community. But it's a twofold thing. I don't look at it as a one-way thing. I think that it's also for the filmmaker or the talent to step up our game.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? To improve in our quality, to improve in our giftings, so that we are on the level and can compete with somebody from the US or whatever not. And I think we do have that, and I'm seeing the improvements. I've definitely seen the improvements. I mean, I've been living here 20-something years now, 23 years. And you can see a lot of the local talent have really just stepped up their game, and it's great to see. And it's just now to let that translate into, you know, the orange economy where they can get compensated and it can be financially viable.
In this Inside Government series, featuring the artists that'll be representing St. Martin in CARIFESTA, one of the points that came up was everyone working in ISO situations. So it leads me to ask, how can we get around or get past that and actually have true collaboration? How do you see collaboration strengthening Caribbean cinema? Jonathan.
I think that is a great question. I think that it is in everybody's best interest to collaborate. I think that we can create our best work when we are in community with one another. And so I think what, you know, facilitates that collaboration is just being knowledgeable of the existence of each other's talents. You know, when I'm creating something, if I'm aware that someone else is doing something and they're very good at it and I'm familiar with their work, then that, you know, is a motivating factor for me to reach out to this person to collaborate with them. But if someone is doing something and I have no idea that they're doing it, then when I am in need of their service, I don't even know that this is someone that I should be reaching out to. And so the more that we can be public facing about the art that we're creating, the more that we have localized platforms on which we can advertise the different things that are happening on the island. Because a lot of stuff happens on St. Martin, like a lot. And we have people from all over the world doing all kinds of stuff. And I think that there is collaboration. I don't want to act like there's not. In Atlantis Rebirth, like I collaborated with lots of different people from, you know, all over the island. And not just, you know, in film or dance, but also in song, also visual artists, also in costume. Also, so there was a lot of collaboration that happened, but I was also familiar with the landscape of art. And not everybody has that familiarity. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who I wasn't familiar with. And so I would love to see, you know, some sort of online platform where I could go and be like, I need a costume maker. Let me go search up a costume maker who's available. I click on their profile and then I can see, you know, their past work. Like, I think that St. Martin has so much creativity, but what's lacking is the documentation of the creativity and then the broadcasting of the creativity. And so if we can, you know, help each other, help ourselves, I think that we would all be in a much better boat.
Fantastic point there, Jonathan. Thank you so much for sharing that. Peter, your take on collaboration used to strengthen Caribbean cinema.
Great. That was a great take, Jonathan, what you were saying. And I just give a shout out to Clara and her team, Clara Reyes and her team, who are doing sort of that, you know, getting a almost like a union kind of thing, right? So that we know who's available. One of the things I've done over the years is stop trying to do everything myself, you know, stop being this one-man band thing, which in the earlier parts of my film work, I had to do. You had to do everything. You had to be the cinematographer, be the director. And in many cases, you still have to do that just based on cost factor, you know, because doing a production is just expensive. And there's some things you just cannot get away with. But in recent years, I've just been doing that. Like the last project, The Wonderful Counselor, I didn't write it. I literally got a writer to do it for me, because not that I can't write, but somebody can do it better than I can. And so, you know, I saw the difference in that. And, you know, having somebody with wardrobe and you know, helping with my wife does makeup for the set and everything. And this just makes the production go up a level, you know, and working with, you know, lighting persons and sound guys and, you know, and these are all from here. These are people that, like The Wonderful Counselor is 100% St. Martin, you know, everyone was from here, was on the film was from St. Martin. And one of the things, so collaboration is just very much key. And I hope this is not going too off topic, but when we were casting for this, when I sat with the actors, I wanted them to just be authentic. Because like I said, stories are universal. So when we were doing the filming in the early stages of rehearsal, I said, listen, I want you to talk like you normally talk. Don't try to change your accent. You know, of course, you know, you don't want it to be too slangy where people just don't understand. But most people in St. Martin talk regular anyway. They're not, it's not like you're dealing with a patois. Do you know what I mean? Where you'll have to put subtitles on. People will understand you. And I intentionally didn't put subtitles on my project because I find that to be an insult sometimes, because, you know, sometimes when you're watching BBC documentaries and you're seeing somebody from St. Lucia talking, and they put in subtitles. I say, but I can understand that. I think most people can understand that. So it's almost like, what are we, primitive people or something? You know what I mean? So I think, not to go again off topic. Sorry, I sometimes do that, Cedric. Forgive me. But you know, again, the collaboration is key because there's just power in numbers. I think just as a people, and this is not just subjective to St. Martin, just as a race of people, we just have to get over this sort of crab in the bucket mentality and this envious thing where we see somebody's success and, you know, secretly we're eyeing them. And it doesn't have to be like that. You know, Jonathan is a filmmaker just like myself, and I celebrate his work. I saw his work and I was like, man, this is fantastic. You know what I mean? And I will throw my support behind him and don't feel it's not taking anything away from me. You know what I mean? But I think we just sometimes have a problem where it's like, if I'm not at the top, then, you know, no one else can be there.
Gentlemen, we don't have too much time, and I wanted to at least get this question in from both of you. What impact do you hope your work, will have or can have as young filmmakers here, or for future young filmmakers? What impact do you hope your work will have on them? Starting with you, Jonathan.
I really hope that my work inspires folks to tell stories that are important to them. I think that film offers such a great opportunity to tell important stories, and in St. Martin we have so many stories to tell. I think we're a story-loving people, as Peter was talking about, and so I hope that people watch the film and they're like, wow, like I am inspired to, you know, step into the future that I create, the future that I design, and I want to tell my story.
Thank you, Jonathan. Peter, how do you want your work to be able to impact young filmmakers?
So I would say that I hope that my work inspires the next generation, that, you know, there's this concept where we always think that we have to go away to succeed. And, you know, nothing's wrong with going away to study and, you know, if you want to go to the Holland and the Americas to study. But I always think that you, like the Prime Minister says, nation building, right? You have to come back to build your community. And my hope is that anybody who sees our projects, or myself as a filmmaker, is that you can actually build a career here on the island, or in St. Martin, or in the islands in general. So that's what I hope that our work does, that it inspires them to say, oh, wait, okay, we can actually, you know, be a cinematographer here on the island, and people can fly in from wherever the US and call for my services, or be a sound, you know, they need professional sound and boom operators and editors and stuff like that. So that's my hope, you know, as I age on.
Jonathan and Peter, I want to thank you so much. Your films, of course, showcase St. Martin's voice in powerful new ways, and I want to wish you both much success at CARIFESTA 2025. And thank you for joining me in this edition of Inside Government.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cedric. Appreciate you.
And to our radio listeners and television viewers, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this edition of Inside Government as we are following the artists and talents that will be representing St. Martin at CARIFESTA 2025. If you've missed my conversations with these artists, and of course, particularly these two filmmakers from St. Martin, be sure to catch video on demand at the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin at facebook.com/SXMGOV. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com at Government of St. Martin. And for audio playback, be sure to tune in to Our Culture, Our Heritage, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM. On behalf of my colleagues at the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, and all of us at the Department of Communication, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thank you so much for tuning in.